Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Raptors Happy Hour. This is the tri-weekly show where we cover the latest news surrounding the Toronto Raptors. We discuss, we chat, we react, we predict, all of that great stuff, all about the Toronto Raptors every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. If you enjoyed to see along the way from today's show, as always, make sure you hit the like button. And if you want to see more content like it 3 times a week, make sure you're subscribed. And on top of this, we also do watch-alongs for most Raptors games. And today is one of those days. It is a double-header day today on the channel. We're live here to discuss quite a few things around the Raptors. And then we'll be live once again for the last late-night start for quite a while. Third straight 10 p.m. start for the Raptors. Tonight, Raptors away at the Portland Trail Blazers. Looking to make it 3 wins in a row while on this trip. And that's going to be tiring. That's going to be tiring. I'm going to be tired, but we're going to fight through. And we're going to have a good time with this stream. Today, though, title of the stream hints at the plans around the Raptors. We're going to look at maybe some organizational plans. What sort of investment does the organization have in Bobby Webster? And then we're going to look at Bobby Webster, maybe wondering if he needs to make a big move. What will be his aggression going into the trade deadline? Are they targeting a guy like Domantas Sabonis, or are they going for somebody a little bit lower down on the contract, I guess the contract list in the NBA in terms of value? They can make a big splash, essentially. Are they going to go for somebody who's going to provide some support? Are they going to look for a guy like Karl Anthony Towns? I don't know. Lots of great things to answer on the show today. So we got a good one planned for you. You got me for the next hour. I realize my pajamas are in the background, so I'm going to move them. You'd think I'd notice before I start, but I don't. I don't always do that. How's everyone doing? Happy Friday. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Been a long week. Got some bad weather this week. I wasn't really feeling any of these sort of winter blues until this week. I'm getting real sick. I'm getting real sick of all of it, and it's gonna be the worst of it all. I think this weekend. I think we're getting quite a bit of snow in Toronto. I think I saw that Ontario is gonna be the coldest place on Earth at some point in the next few days. Maybe it was today. I'm not sure. But, it can't. Maybe more northern, but it's cold. It's cold in a lot of places, but definitely cold here today. Feels like minus 26 with the wind chill, at least earlier in the day. It did here downtown Toronto. Feels like minus 20 right now, so I guess not as bad. Overnight conditions, though, it's going to be minus 20 when I wake up in the morning. Awesome stuff. Yeah, that's what we got. But anyways, how are you guys doing? Other than that, it's Friday. I'm looking forward to the weekend. I have a jam-packed weekend. Party tomorrow and Sunday NFL Conference Championship games. It's bound to be going Friday night hoops. We got the Raptors. I got a couple beers in the fridge ready to go for that stream. Should be a ton of fun. Adam joining us, Lalanders, it's the Gary, and Graham Vandervecht, as well as hi there, it's me. Thank you for coming through. And good game, 391. Fayez 416. A lot of people in the chat coming through right now. Say what's up if you're out here. We'll read through some of these and we'll get into the meat of the show today. We got minus 40 and snow since November near Timmins. Enjoy the South. Yes. Timmins is a brutal one. I knew a couple people from Timmins because I went to school in Sudbury, where it was much colder in Sudbury than it is in Toronto usually. So, I've gone through worse winters, but I have not gone through a Timmins winter. I do not envy the minus 40 right now. Stay warm out there. I'm not moved by any big trade, just move enough to duck the tax. It's the Gary saying. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the stream today. The one trade I was really interested, really pushing for was a trade for Ja Morant. And it appears as though that's the only one the Raptors are not interested in at all. So it may be a case of shifting their focus elsewhere. But that was the one I was really, really pushing for. We'll talk about some other ones here today. Casey, to joining us. How's it going? I'm doing well. Thank you for joining me here. I hope you are also well on the other end. Sabonis is making a lot of money. It's a lot of money, yes. Would people really want him to be our highest paid player? Doesn't help the tax either. We'll talk. We'll get to this Sabonis thing. I don't want to spoil anything as we progress through the stream today, but we will talk all things Domantas Sabonis a little bit later on. Chicago, Milwaukee, Minnesota, even colder right now. New York is getting it this weekend too. Yeah, I spoke to a guy who lives in Chicago today. It's colder there in Chicago than it is in Toronto, and I'm going to assume it was windier there as well, especially if you're near the lake. Talked to a guy in Florida too, and it's very nice in Florida right now. If you guys want to go there, yeah, polar vortex on the way. Thankfully, I'm hosting a party tomorrow, so I don't have to go anywhere to go out places. People have to come to me. I apologize to them, but at least I don't have to brave the cold in order to do it. And it's like a theme party. It's a disco theme party. So like if anyone's in like an outfit, you got to bundle up to make sure you get there for sure. If Kessler's available, would love him. I'd love a center who can play this season. Walker Kessler is not that, unfortunately. I'd like to hear your live take on the trade I sent regarding the Raptors, Knicks, and Memphis. I will give a live reaction to that when we talk a little bit later on about Karl-Anthony Towns. Sure, I got you. I did react to it in the Discord, but I will save this image to talk about it on stream later on when we get to the Karl-Anthony Towns segment, which is going to be at the end of today's show. So stay patient. We will get there. I don't want to load up the first 10 minutes of the show with info and then, have to rehash it later. So we'll save all of it as we move through the stream. Sharp or Goga? I'm not going to talk about Goga today, but Goga Bitadze is a name I am very firmly interested in. I'm very interested in Sharp. I just don't see why the Nets would be super interested in trading him. Goga Bitadze, I am interested in, and I could see Orlando having interest in trading him as well as that, for sure. Anyways, I've teased it enough. Just like interacting with the chat. Let's get into the first thing that I wanted to discuss today. Actually, it's not particularly on the trade front. I just kind of want to take a second here because we really should zoom out a little bit on the season so far for the Toronto Raptors. They have a winning record. They're playing really good basketball. They are exceeding expectations on the court, and they are doing all of it while dealing with some very key and lengthy injuries to the team. And I must say, that is, considering where the Raptors were expected to be the start of the season, extraordinarily remarkable. We talked about at the start of the season, like what heights the Raptors could reach. I felt like this was a play-in team that would make the playoffs through the play-in tournament. I thought it would be the 7 or 8 seed, and obviously that could still happen. It's very, very tight in the Eastern Conference standings right now. But I thought like it would take a really upper percentile season, if that's the right way to describe it, for the Raptors to achieve a top 6 seed and be a solidified playoff team. Now, they've firmly established themselves as a threat to do just that. They are currently, at the time that we're doing this stream here today, they are currently 27-19. They're playing the Portland Trail Blazers tonight. They are the 4 seed in the East. They are 1.5 games out of the 2 seed Boston Celtics, but they are also just 3.5 games up on the 8 seed Miami Heat. Top 8 is where I want to be if I'm a Raptors fan for the end of the season. I mean, top 6 is where I want to be. Start of the season, I would have accepted a top 8 seed. Now, though, I'd kind of feel a little bit disappointed if that was the case. And what's so astonishing about this season is that we felt like the starting 5 was quality for the Raptors. There was a large amount of players who could become contributors off the bench, but didn't really feel like it was a top-heavy bench. There have been some, I think what's been big and what has allowed the Raptors to do is some of the higher-level play from the people at the top of their bench, because we felt like this team was a couple injuries away from the wheels just completely falling off the wagon, but that hasn't materialized for the Raptors. Jakob Poeltl, who has been so vital to winning over the last years. The Raptors' win-loss record shifted around 20% there's a 20% change in the amount of games the Raptors won when Jakob Poeltl was in versus out since he rejoined the Raptors heading into the season. They had about a 44% win percentage with him and about 22% without him. Now, part of that, obviously, is the fact that the Raptors don't have, like, a backup for him. So if Jakob Poeltl's out, you don't have a 7-footer on the team. And that makes it matter quite a bit more because, like, if Emmanuel Quickly goes out, at least you have Jamal Shead you can bring in. If Jakob Poeltl's out, you don't really have that direct sort of replacement for the player. So on top of him being very valuable going into the season, the Raptors didn't really have a backup for him. So it always felt like a couple injuries would have had serious ramifications towards the team. But for Jakob Poeltl, he's only played in 21 of the Raptors' games this season out of the 46 so far. And in those 21 games, he hasn't even been that great because I don't think he's been healthy at all for those 21 games. I don't think at any point he was like even close to 100%. He's been dealing with the back issue. He's been out for a long time. And unfortunately, like, there's just like no update here. 2 weeks ago, he was cleared for contact or supposed to be, and then it didn't happen. And then Darko is essentially saying now that, like, hopefully he's back sooner than later. There is no real update at this point. He's going through workouts. He started to non-contact all of that. But, like, we're still, like, a lack of information about his health status. And on top of that, we've had R.J. Barrett miss a bunch of games, and we've seen how vital he has been for the Raptors this season. R.J. Barrett has played in only 23 of the Raptors games so far. And R.J. Barrett has been fantastic for the Raptors this season. Absolutely fantastic for the team this season. Almost 20 points per game, doing so efficiently, playing like a real role. Shooting volume has gone down over 2 attempts per game. He's been important. He has been a player that has helped the Raptors win games this season, and he hasn't even played, or I guess he's played in exactly half of the games so far this season. Great news that he's supposed to be back for tonight's game against the Portland Trailblazers, but he's missed time. Jakob Poeltl's missed significant time, and when he hasn't missed time, he hasn't been healthy. All of these injuries have been piling up for the team, yet still they are the 4 seed. Yet still they are 27-19. And I think a major reason why they've been able to go through this stretch as is because, well, first of all, the bench play. I said it a bit earlier, like, it didn't feel like a top-heavy bench. It just felt like it was like a lot of players who can contribute. Well, it has turned into a top-heavy bench because of how well some of the top guys in the bench are playing. Sandro Mamukelashvili is like a classic Raptors taking a chance on a cheap contract, a guy who's shown flashes as a shooter in the past. Can he continue to do that? Can he even scale that up after he joins the team? They've bet on guys like, Juancho Hernan-Gomez to do that. They've bet on guys like Yuta Watanabe to do that. They didn't do it. But Mamu has come in and been spectacular. He's been a fantastic shooter. He's contributed on both ends of the floor, but what a nice punch of offense off the bench, and nice to have a backup center. He's undersized, doesn't, fit the void of a Poeltl injury, but what tremendous minutes the Raptors are getting out of him. Jamal Shead has grown so much to point guard over the offseason, become a much more established part of the rotation. He looks much more comfortable on the floor, much more poised on the floor. We already knew how good his defense was. That even maybe stepped up, and he's turning into more of a threat on offense. Colin Murray-Boyle's a 9th overall pick. The Raptors thought that, like, this was a player for the future, player that they wanted to develop. It seemed to me like it was a player that would have needed time to adjust to the NBA. I mean, it took him like less than 10 games, I think, to adjust to the NBA because he has been terrific. But even he's missed some games. We've had like good health for, Barnes has missed, I think, a couple. Ingram's missed a few. Quickly's missed, I think, 2. We've had like a lot of injury luck for the 2 top guys, Ingram and Barnes, but we have really been hit with a bit of the injury bug and still been able to produce high levels of basketball on the court to a consistent degree. There was like that one pocket of the season where they lost a bunch of games in succession. RJ's first injury where, things were bleak. Other than that, there was like a 1-4 start. There was that one pocket where they lost a bunch of games when R.J. Barrett was out. And other than that, they have just been awesome all season. So I think it is important to kind of zoom out and appreciate that because, like, a healthy Raptors team probably wasn't really expected to be in this position right now, let alone one that hasn't been healthy like they have been. But we're getting guys back, hopefully. Hopefully Purdy will come back. I mean, there could be moves for the Raptors towards the trade deadline. We have to pray, look, at least if there's been injury, it hasn't been to guys like Scotty Barnes or Brandon Ingram to a lengthy degree. If that were to happen, I don't know if we can maintain levels like this, but you give a lot of credit to the team, a lot of credit to the coaching staff for integrating these usual bench players into the starting five and then having some of them step up and playing so well. Even with a lack of depth right now, they still are finding ways to win games as they have done all season. They are absolutely finding ways to win games. So I'm wondering if this kind of shifts the approach for the season. They see an Eastern Conference potentially for the taking. Will this make the Raptors even more aggressive? I think the Raptors, to answer that, would have always expected to be at least in a playoff mix, at least in a play-in mix. And I think at that point, they would always be looking to try and be pretty aggressive towards the trade deadline. So I don't think this 4 seed is really changing how they're planning on attacking the trade deadline compared to their an 8 or 9 seed. Now, if they were completely awful this season and were outside the play-in spots, maybe they would approach it differently and think okay, we need to tank, we need to sell off some guys, get expiring contracts, whatever. But I don't think this is necessarily making them think they can be competitive. They need to make a big trade. I think they were looking to make a competitive trade regardless, but 27-19, I know it's easy to get upset about certain games, certain performances, but again, I continue to say it, sit back and appreciate what the Raptors have accomplished so far this season, and hopefully they can continue to accomplish it the rest of the way, finish the top 6 seed in this, turning into decently competitive Eastern Conference. It's great. It's okay to be happy about the team. It's okay to be satisfied with where they are at. So the Raptors doing very well facing, but yeah, Celtics. I mean, God, the Celtics, stunning how well they're playing. I thought they would be a candidate to miss the playoffs, and here they are. I think they're the best team in the Eastern Conference. This with all these injuries, imagine where we could be with a more healthy group of guys. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're equal with the Knicks right now. 1.5 games back of the Celtics, 7 games back of the Pistons, but they've been excellent. And we haven't been healthy, and we haven't really had a proper center all season. It's crazy. Peak Pirtle was back when him and Family were running pick and rolls. Pirtle had his highest field goal percentage in the league back then. I think last season was Pirtle's peak, to be honest, because they started running a bit more of the offense through him in certain spots, and I think we really saw his offense start to flourish quite a bit more last season. But it's been such a sharp drop off this season, and I have to believe it's the back issues that are causing that. Well, every team wants a main go-to guy. I actually think it's better we have all of our guys perform to the best they can rather than the only guy going off. Yeah, it's worked this season. I had doubts about it, but the Raptors are finding ways to make all this fit, even with RJ Barrett. I have to give a ton of credit to Dark Rayak, which I did not think any coach could really get this level of output, let alone him, who I had my major reservations against going into the season. As we've seen, though, and as we'll get to, RJ Barrett's time with the Raptors might be limited because it could be less than a month before he's traded, and we will get into that. We will talk about that here. Feel bad for Kuminga, got minutes and made Kerr look bad, then he got injured the next game. Yes. Kind of in the story for Kuminga, just has never earned the trust of Steve Kerr to get consistent minutes. RJ, Pirtle, Baji, okay. Sabonis. Everyone talk about Sabonis. Let's talk about Sabonis. So there had been some conversations kind of exploring the possibility of the Raptors trading for Sabonis, saying that the Raptors had interest. But now it really feels like those rumors are starting to absolutely heat up. And the Raptors have legitimate interest in trading for Domantas Sabonis, according to reports. So let's talk about let's talk about the reports around the interest, how valid they are. Then let's talk about what Domantas Sabonis could do for the team. We'll talk about what the Raptors have to trade for him, and we'll discuss if the Raptors should actually move forward and try to trade for him. So as I said, lots of reports coming out. We've had a few people talk about it, but I think in particular the big one that we need to look at is from Jake Fisher. I think he left Yahoo, but anyways, he's been a source that has been very in tune with the Raptors in the last few years, and he has continued to report the dealings surrounding Domantas Sabonis. So let's listen into what he had to say recently on the situation.
Sabonis has interest from Toronto. We've continued to report that, but it'll be tricky to find an agreement there, being that the Raptors, to my understanding, are really just trying to look at what they can get for a combination of Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and Jakob Poeltl. And the Kings do not want long-term salary on their books right now. Sabonis.
So that's where some of the complications come into play. I think a lot of what the Raptors have been doing, and I agree there, is they're trying to get off some contracts here. They've been trying to get out the RJ Barrett contract for about a year now. They've been unsuccessful in doing that in the past. It's been clear to see. RJ Barrett's got a year and a half left of his contract. The Raptors have wanted to get rid of this contract. But as this season has gone on, it's starting to kind of shift towards, well, actually, this Emmanuel Quickley contract's probably worse. And the Jakob Poeltl contract they just freaking gave him is like, well, we're worried about this being actually bad, even though they like at least the Quickley one's a year and a half old. The Poeltl one is freshly signed. Like the ink's just getting dry on that one. So obviously they've put themselves in a pretty horrific spot there. And it kind of like, as Fisher was saying there, it's as if the Raptors are just looking around the league to see who will take it on. Well, the Sacramento Kings could have a little bit of an interest in getting off of Sabonis' contract. Like, they don't want to pile on bigger contract, but they could have an interest in getting off of Sabonis' contract. There could be a interest on their part from, getting draft capital to do it, and maybe they'd be willing to take on a longer-term contract in order to make that happen. There's a lot of things at play here, but before we get into, the trade and what it could look like, let's get into, what Sabonis has been doing for the Kings. So, age 29 season, and production is a lot lower than it has been. Here's a guy who's received votes for MVP twice in the last 4 years. He's been an all-star now 3 times, twice with Indiana. Moved to Sacramento, of course, in the Tyrese Halliburton trade, which I think was a horrific trade for the Kings. But, they had success after. They were a 3 seed 1 year with Sabonis and Fox. He's been All-NBA third team on 2 occasions. But the Kings have fallen off, and he is not performing well this season. And I think the big issue always associated with Domantas Sabonis, as much as he's a very talented offensive hub, really good scorer, double-double machine, a triple-double threat on most nights, as much as production is down this season on this version of the Kings team, the issues have always stemmed from he's not a reliable enough floor spacer. Sure, he can shoot the 3 ball, but he's not a super reliable floor spacer. That's fine. Teams you can get around. At least he can shoot the 3 and has a threat from out there. Where there's been bigger issues is the fact that he's not a good defender. He's not somebody who helps you on defense, doesn't protect the rim well, and he has become very expensive for the Kings. He was valuable enough they thought to trade Tyrese Halliburton in order to get him. And there's absolutely quality within this player, no doubt. But I think if you are building a team around this much money being invested into your center, you really need to have one that's solidified on defense or is a incredibly much more dynamic threat from a floor spacing standpoint. And Sabonis is neither of these things. He's neither a super gravity shifting floor spacer. I mean, this season he's shooting 17%. That's way down from normal, but defensively, that has never been his strong suit. Teams try to get him out in space, and it can lead to issues. The Raptors, I guess, have this season not had that sort of traditional anchor on defense and have been very successful defensively with the likes of, Murray Boyles playing there, Mamoukelashvili playing there, sometimes Scotty Barnes as the small ball 5. So maybe they're thinking they can still find success, but it's a big contract and a lot that you have to trade in order to do this. And this year, I'm not like super concerned. Like his stats are way down, 15.4 points, 11.4 rebounds. I think it's a bad situation in Sacramento, and I think those numbers would go up if he got traded, but I have my reservations against what Sabonis could do on the court for the Raptors. But for the sake of like what we're arguing here, let's try and decipher what the trade would have to look like for the Raptors to pull it off. Like, is there a good trade we could do? Could we get off a bad contract and do this? Because Sabonis, his contract right now, he's making $42.3 million. That goes up to $45.4 next year, $48.6 the year after that. It's a big contract. 2.5 more years of it, but it's a big contract for Sabonis. A lot of money to tie up there. He'd become the most expensive player on the Raptors. So let's discuss here. If you're going to do this trade for me, you got to get up to that number. You're obviously not trading Scotty Barnes. You're obviously not trading Brandon Ingram. I do not see why they would want Emmanuel quickly. If you're trading for a center, I've maintained I don't want 2 centers, like 2 high paid centers. Pirtle's got to be in the deal. If you're going to get to the $42 million, you kind of have no choice. You have to include RJ Barrett. I want to get a little bit of value back. I think you could go for Keon Ellis. He's been out of favor with the Kings. I think as a shooting guard, he could bring a lot of good qualities to the Raptors. Good size, good amount of floor spacing. I think he'd play a really good role for the Raptors. I think he could even start for the Raptors if you were to move RJ Barrett. I'm not saying Keon is not as good as RJ Barrett. I'm not saying that whatsoever, but he's a quality player who I think could fit the starting role and complement guys in the starting 5. If you're doing this, you're getting off a really bad contract, it seems, right now with Pirtle. I think you have to give a pick. Let's say this year's pick goes to the Kings, give them some draft capital in this tanking season. I think this works. Yeah. I think that's realistically what the trade would have to look like here. And I understand you're getting off of the Pirtle contract, and that's a plus. But Sabonis is not a good defender, not a super reliable shooter on offense. Like, really, Domantas Sabonis, where he's been successful, is as a role man with like a quality point guard like De'Aaron Fox in the past, or it has been like he's your offensive hub. And it doesn't really make sense for me to trade for an offensive hub when you kind of like you have one. That's what Scotty Barnes is for. That's your offensive hub. So why trade for a $42.3 million offensive hub that has like a bunch of weaknesses to his game when RJ Barrett is providing you quality play and is helping your team win this season? This one is not really working for me. I continue to not be super enthused about the idea of trading for Sabonis. If they do it, like, this is probably the best they could do out of it. Like, at least you're still getting Keon Ellis. Sabonis I'm sure would play well for the Raptors, but that's a lot of money to commit to something I don't think is an ideal fit next to the 2 players you're really trying to build around, in particular the player trying to build around with Scotty Barnes. So for me, I don't want to go for Sabonis. I don't. I could see why the Raptors would consider something like this. Like the Pirtle contract, there's 3.5 more years before the $5 million guarantee for the 5th year, so it's not fully guaranteed. Sabonis only 2.5 years. You get off the RJ Barrett contract here, where the Raptors seem to want to do. But again, I think your team is better by not making this trade. And I don't think this changes your contract situation that drastically. But, I mean, there might be where I think this trade would have to, like, where it could get legs is if you are, like, that fearful of Pirtle's health going forward. Like, if this is going to be a year-over-year problem, this might be your way out of that Pirtle contract. I could see that being a part where the Raptors take like enough of a positive to want to do this, but I am hesitant here. And to be honest, I think the Kings would kind of be hesitant as well to take that big of a Pirtle contract. But with a pick going in as well, with RJ Barrett coming off in a couple of seasons, a season and a half, maybe there is desire there. I think this is like, I think like from a pure value perspective, this is pretty fair. I just, on a personal level, don't really want to do it. And judging by my glances over at our live chat here, doesn't seem like a lot of these guys really want to go for it either. Let's take a look at what you guys are saying. It's a lot. It's a lot to commit to, right? For not like an ideal fit. It's not like a case of last year with like if it was like Pirtle and Bruce Brown, I'd be like, okay, you're getting Sabonis here, but because RJ Barrett is seriously helping you win games, it kind of deters me off it quite a bit, really. Jakob Pertl is 19 million, so we're gonna give that away. Our future to eat that up. Makes zero sense to me. Well, the Pirtle contract gets worse. It's 19.5 this year. It's 19.5 next year. Then it gets a lot worse. So that's what you're kind of prepping to want to avoid. If Pirtle is healthy, his contract's fine. I completely agree with you, Steve Stevens. But there might be a genuine fear that the health is not going to get better over time. I don't know. Just saying. Rather we get Doug. He's a proven shooter. Doug. McDermott? I think. No. Who the hell? I think the time for Doug McDermott to be effective in the NBA is gone. So I'm going to pass on McDermott. Also, Keanu's is way better than him. For sure. It's in a bad year. He's still putting up better numbers than Yak. He's also making double him, remember. So you have to pay. You have to pay to have that sort of service. I think he's good. I just don't love the fit, and I think you have to trade a bit too much to get it. I don't think that's like an egregiously bad trade. And I think Sabonis is good, but the qualities you usually need for that position, he doesn't really possess. Like, I think if you're not going to be a floor spacer as a big, you better be a really good defender, and he's neither. It's kind of what scared me off of Derek Queen at the draft. Now, granted, he's much more talented than I thought, but again, not a floor spacer, not a defender. Scary. Giovanni says, unrealistic, and it's going to cost 2 unprotected firsts for the Kings to eat Yak's contract. Kings want a first for Keon Ellis. Also, that's not. They're not getting that. But and sometimes you'd be lucky to get for 2 first. It could. You're right. It could be 2 first. Maybe I undersold it a little bit. And if it is 2 first, I'm fully. There's no chance I'd want to do that. But I think they could view the Sabonis contract as not being great either. And I think that's how you get spin if you're the Raptors. It's like, it's not like that's a great contract either, boss. Not as probably not as it's kind of bad because it's a lot more money for 2.5 years rather than less money for 3.5, which is Pirtle. Sabonis has a torn meniscus. How long do you think till he's playing? Meniscus injury is usually 4 weeks. A torn meniscus. Meniscus isn't as dire of a knee injury as like an ACL or MCL, for example. Actually, I think like an ACL. Let's say meniscus is a bit easier to get right, but not nothing. It's a good point. Just making my way through the chat here. A lot of people join us here. Hey, if you're enjoying the stream so far, make sure you hit the like button. Help drive us up in the YouTube algorithm. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me on the show today. What else we have to talk about? So we're going to talk about Bobby Webster job security. So we're going to talk a little bit about Karl Anthony Towns. So plenty more on the way. Good games with Sabonis is the one with the bad contract. I think if I had to choose which contract to have on my team, I'd choose Sabonis. It's not as long, and it's a much better player. Better player. Even though I don't like the fit as much. The Pirtle back thing is genuinely scaring me. I need to see this guy playing healthy before my fears are dampened. But you're right. So it's not like Sabonis is a good contract, right? So the Kings kind of, have to lower the value because of that as well. The Lakers wanted Ellis and Kings wanted a first-round pick for Ellis. They can want a first-round pick. They're not. I don't think they're getting one. They're not going to get one for him. So if they genuinely want to trade him, they are not getting a first. If they want to get something for him, they have to lower the valuation. I'm saying they can say, yeah, I can say whatever. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. Keep RJ. E. Colt says, I'm kind of with you there. It has to. I continue to say it has to be a good trade to do it. That's not a horrific trade, but I think at this point you should be pretty comfortable keeping RJ. If you genuinely want to trade him still at some point next season when it's an expiring contract, that'll be a lot more valuable to a team to have that expiring salary. But still, teams are a bit scared off because of the 1.5 years left. So we are okay with 5 points because he can defend, but Kings don't play him. So how great is he really? The Keon Ellis situation is curious because he is quite based on my estimations, quite a bit better than he's being made out to be this season. The Kings feels like to me are underutilizing him very heavily. Good defender, good shooter, who I think he performs better in situations where he's complementing better players. He's not the type of player that's gonna raise your floor, but he's the type of player that could maybe raise your ceiling a little bit. And I think having that to complement Ingram and Barnes is worthwhile. If you just like box score surf on the season, for sure, like it doesn't look great for Ellis, but feels like he's been underutilized and maybe isn't in the ideal situation for his play. But again, like you're on the Sacramento Kings, I saw the caliber of players, they're trotting out, and he's not one of them getting consistent minutes. Maybe that should scare me a little bit more. But I think in the right environment, he's a much, much better player than he has been showcased to be this season. Greg, joining us, 12-month member, says, I'm forgetting an impact guard and a backup rim protector, not Sabonis. Fair enough. It's just Darko having a bias for European players who play no defense. I don't think Darko is at all involved in this. I think that the front office is going to go ahead and make the trades that they feel are best for the organization. I don't think Darko is knocking on Bobby's door saying, get me Domantas Sabonis or anything like that. Are we re-signing RJ to become a tax team? No. I'd be quite stunned if RJ ends up getting extended as a Raptor. So I think next year is the max he lasts because I think they're gonna trade him to upgrade there. RJ is like a Fred VanVleet next season as expiring, where all gyms know they have to trade him or lose him for nothing. So they will lowball RJ next season with 2 seconds and expiring. Guess what? Raptors probably take something. Like RJ Barrett is gonna become more valuable next season because it won't be viewed as a bad contract. It'll be viewed as an expiring contract. Again, teams are not trading for Barrett because they want RJ Barrett. It is purely salary matching. So next year when it's expiring, it's a lot more simple for a team to want to salary match with it expiring, like CJ McCollum this year. I landed Trae Young. There's value in expiring salary. RJ becomes that next season. But good player that helps the team. I just don't think he's going to end up getting extended by the Raptors, All right. A lot of comments today. Thank you, guys. We just need a smaller market center and power forward. We have enough shooters. We need big bodies in the paint, period. We have enough shooters. We have enough. Up here, we have enough shooters. In theory, we do. In actuality, this is the worst three-point shooting team in the National Basketball Association. So I don't think I'm satisfied with that. Personally, if you're the absolute worst in the league at it, you probably need to do something to make it better. I'd like some big bodies in the paint. No denying that. But to say we have enough shooters, I unfortunately have to disagree. I would love to boost there. Loyalty means nothing in sports, business for the most part. Yeah, welcome to the modern NBA. Like, too much money at stake for loyalty. These are billion-dollar organizations, all of them. I'm sorry if RJ has been loyal through his contract that he had no choice but to like be a part of. I know he wants to be here, but it's not like the loyalty's been tested. I suppose maybe in a way it has, where they've been trying to trade him this whole time, and he's just getting down to business, still playing, and he's not pouting over it. But loyalty doesn't get you like another big contract with the team. I think the Raptors, I think it's written on the wall that eventually he will have to get moved on. I'm not saying that I think like the Raptors' approach to it right now is the best based on how he's played this season, but I'm just saying that's kind of what the situation is. They have a desire to move him, and it seems like that hasn't wavered even with how well he's played this season. And I don't think he can play any better than he is right now, really. Off topic, I'm looking to do live streams for Rockets games. I'm wondering what PC and cam you use. I love stream stacks and balls. Well, thank you, Lake Show Jerry. Computer, I actually don't know what I bought. I actually don't know. I'll Google it. I'll look it up really quickly. Camera, if you're just getting into it, just get a Logitech webcam. Like a C920 or even better, a C922 or even better, a Brio. If you're just doing live streams, I have like a better camera that I initially had for vlogs, which I don't do anymore, so I just kept that. It's really nice. It's a bit overkill. I think you're more than fine with like a Logitech webcam. C920 budget. I think you're better off going up to like a C922 or a Logitech Brio. My computer, I'm really bad with computers, so I have, what did I freaking buy? You don't need to like destroy your bank account. I have a GMK Tech K11 gaming mini PC. To be honest, just ask ChatGPT to help you pick a computer. I think that's the best way to do it. Okay. Let's keep it moving on the show. Let's talk about Vince Carter leaving back in the day, or how even Alonzo Mourning, when traded for him, didn't play a single game for us. Well, I don't know what that has to do with it, but that wasn't very loyal of them, was it? Anyways. There's been some rumblings. People have discussed that maybe part of the reason that the Raptors are being so aggressive right now in the trade market, targeting the likes of, there was reports it was Ja Morant. Maybe that's kind of faded away, but there have been concrete reports they've been interested in a guy like Anthony Davis or Domantas Sabonis. And I think to the majority of the fan base, that desire for the trade hasn't resonated with them as much. But it feels like the Raptors really do want to be aggressive. There could be a variety of reasons that's the case. Could it be the Raptors smell blood in this Eastern Conference? They've exceeded expectations, want to attack the potential Eastern Conference in the playoffs. And other people have speculated that maybe Bobby Webster, his seat's getting a little bit warm, and to lock down job security, he feels a need to be aggressive, make a trade now, and solidify his position with the team. But let's investigate a little bit further to see if that actually is the case. I have asked a lot this season, like, how do we treat Bobby Webster's tenure with the Raptors? Do we reset the clock after Masai Ujiri got fired? Is it now, okay, that was Masai Ujiri's team. Now it's Bobby Webster's team. The Bobby Webster tenure has just started, even though he's been our GM for a whole load of years now, helped construct the NBA championship team. Felt like all of the praise, or at least most of it, and criticism, all of the praise and criticism fell on Masai Ujiri's shoulders. So I don't really know behind the scenes what sort of power dynamic there was there. So I've always wondered how much of if we see success this year or if we see failure this season or whatever in between, how much of that is put on Bobby Webster versus Masai Ujiri? Like if things aren't going well, if there are roster issues, like we still don't have a center, like there's not enough shooting, we have a couple players on horrific contracts that were signed in the last year and a half. How much of that is on Bobby Webster? How much is Bobby Webster at fault for that? I think we're somewhere in the middle where we need to start seeing improvements like pretty immediately with Bobby Webster, but enough, like there's enough leeway here to say, okay, now it's your time to be in charge and be the main decision maker here, that we can give a little bit of time and a little bit of a longer leash to him to kind of see what he can do. But maybe Bobby Webster was kind of feeling the pressure. Maybe that's why he was being so aggressive with the possible trades. Well, that was a good theory, but I'm happy that we have concrete reporting now to say that that is not the case whatsoever. According to reports from Michael Grange of Sportsnet, who he's a good source. You know, he's good. He's not one that's lying necessarily. He's ever lying, but I guess there could be like maybe questions over how much information he's being fed. But I think he's a genuine reporter who's providing reports based on what he deems to be concrete evidence. I think it's a solid source to work with. And he says that the Raptors are prepared to be patient with Webster over the long term. Like, I thought like once Masai Ujiri left, that Bobby like was getting a longer contract. He was getting an extension because he got a raise to take on a bigger role, but kept the same title. But actually, there were suggestions that said that he was in the last year of his contract and perhaps is scouring the market for bold moves that could accelerate the Raptors' timeline to make it show that he's worthwhile. The Raptors should keep him around. Well, it's actually the opposite of that, because he's not making the decision based on his contract status, because according to multiple sources, Bobby Webster and the Raptors have had exploratory discussions on a multi-year extension to his current deal, with talks expected to pick up after the trade deadline. So I think this can only be considered good news here. I, again, think that there should be a little bit of extra leeway with Bobby Webster, because it felt like Masai Ujiri was the head honcho there and was calling the shots at the end of the day. I'm sure Bobby Webster had a lot to do with the decision-making, and he is not exempt from criticism on how bad the Emmanuel Quickley contract looks a year and a half later, or how bad the Jakob Poeltl contract looks just 6 months later. He is not exempt from criticism at all from those things. But I think this is good because we're not making snappy decisions just to save your job, just to get a contract extension. Bobby Webster right now is looking to make decisions for the team that are going to benefit them for the long term, because there is confidence, it seems right now, from ownership, from Rodgers, that he is a guy that can stick with his team for a number of years. So when they're making calls around Trae Young, Anthony Davis, Domantas Sabonis, Ja Morant, whoever else they may be calling to get trades around, they are generally looking for long-term plans for this team and not just quick fixes, which I like, which I definitely like. What we're going to learn now and in the coming, I think we'll learn in the coming weeks and maybe in the next year or two about Bobby Webster, is if he shares Masai Ujiri's level of aggression and appetite for, big moves. Last season, the Raptors made a pretty bold move when they were a tanking team. They traded some assets, not a lot, but they traded stuff to bring in Brandon Ingram and committed to paying him a handsome bit of money that his own agency said that nobody else was going to give him. Masai Ujiri was always swimming around looking for the big fish in the trade market. And though it didn't really come off ever, there was consistent action with trade deadlines. There was consistent aggression to be better. Sometimes over-aggression, like the trade deadline where they acquired Jakob Poeltl back from the San Antonio Spurs. A trade that kind of slowly is getting worse with age, when initially it didn't even look like a good trade to begin with. It felt like they were clinging on to a core that didn't really have a lot of legs in making the playoff push. They've turned things around pretty admirably this season. The Raptors are the 4 seed at the time that we're doing the stream here. They're in the mix definitely to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, but there still could be further strengthening that we see here. So again, I'm just really curious about Bobby Webster's style for the front office. Will it be reminiscent of that aggression that Masai Ujiri had, or will it be a bit more reserved? Seems based on the reports we're getting that it's aggressive. How desperate will they be to make the trades? Well, it's good to know that he has this job security because he won't be so inclined to maybe make a trade that he probably shouldn't make. And it feels like, Bobby Webster learned from Masai Ujiri. Masai Ujiri was always, like I said, poking around these big fish. Rarely did a trade materialize because the Raptors were always trying to find a good deal. Then there was a situation where Brandon Ingram was available for expiring salary and a first-round pick from the Pacers who went on to make the NBA Finals. Now, I know the Pacers suck now, and it would be nice to have that pick, but at the time, not a great first-round pick and expiring salary to bring in Brandon Ingram. Felt like a pretty good deal for a high-quality player. Masai Ujiri called it pre-agency because the Raptors don't attract free agents. This is where the Raptors get their business done, and they got it done. It has absolutely worked out so far with Brandon Ingram on the Raptors. So there is a lot that can change, and I think there's stuff that should change. Personally, if we're not going from Ja Morant, I'm leaning towards, ducking the tax and bringing in some supplementary help to the center position. But maybe Bobby Webster could be approaching things very differently here. Case Cedar in the chat said Bobby Webster is definitely not locked. I think Roger will either get him to trade a player and he can bring in revenue and seat getters. Also, Roger I feel like won't care about spending money as long as they are competitive and can sell out the seats. For example, the Blue Jays. Kind of disagree. There are a lot of stricter restrictions on like salary caps in the NBA, and I don't think that that Rodgers will be looking at this current Raptors team right now and think that it is appropriate to be a tax team. Really, like when you're a tax team, that is a sign that you need to be a contender. And as well as the Raptors have looked this season, I don't quite think that they're in that position to be a contender. So I think there will be a strong desire to duck the tax. I don't feel like there will be a lot of push from ownership to make a big trade and get asses in seats. Like if they really want a lot of people in seats, I think they could lower the price of tickets and that would draw a lot more interest. But feels like the Raptors are moving things in the right direction right now. We're having a quality season so far. Scotty Barnes is starting to look like, a superstar player that we thought we had in his rookie season. Things are looking tremendous there. I don't think the Raptors need to force things here, and it doesn't feel like with the extension potentially coming into play for Barrett that Rodgers is looking to force things for the team as well. I think we're in a good spot here. I'm glad I haven't seen enough of Bobby Webster on his own to make definitive statements against him, but it's time to start. It is time to start addressing some of the concerns for the team. It is time to start, worrying how is it years later and we still don't have a backup center for Pirtle? How is it that we're still an awful 3-point shooting team? These things need to be addressed, and I think in the next 12 months. In the summer, we could probably be critical at the end of the summer, but it's tough to get stuff done in the mid-season. Next season, I think we can scrutinize Bobby Webster a lot more than we should be this season for the turnaround. So I'll give him a bit more time, but again, next season is where we really need to see decisions start to be made that ramps things up. No trade going to put the Raptors here as title contenders. This will be a good year for the young players to finally get some playoff experience. I kind of agree with that. It's not going to be I think it's great to be in the playoffs this year. I don't think we're going to win a championship or anything, but you're right. Typically you want to either be a contender or one of the worst teams in the league. But I think there is value in being a playoff team and seeing incremental growth and getting better, right? So I'm fine with that. What is going on here? Sorry. The right trade gives a chance to at least compete. Yeah, I think so too. But I'm okay like not doing that as well. I think we can be a quality playoff team here and look to make even greater strides next season. A playoff season, just being in the playoffs this year would, I think, buy time and say, that was fine. Now let's try and kick on next season. Anyways, to finish off here today, we'll finish off this. We're streaming again later. We're running a little late here, but I'll go a little overtime here. I did kind of want to look at the chances of a Zach LaVine trade. The Knicks are in a rough patch right now. Zach LaVine has had games where he's not closing. Mitchell Robinson has had that job. And there's questions about like Karl-Anthony Towns here long term with the team. So some people have floated if the Raptors would move for this. I said earlier, if you're not going to be a good defensive player as a big, you better be a really good floor spacer. Karl-Anthony Towns is a tremendous floor spacer for any position, let alone as like a 7-foot center. So let's try and figure out what the trade would look like. If this is even possible here. Not going to like go super in depth on this, but like, is this possible? 3 years left there's 2.5 years left and $53 million for this season. That's a lot of money to get up to. I continue to say I really don't want to trade for a center unless you're trading Pirtle. If it's Pirtle, then it's Emmanuel Quickley going back to the Knicks. Does this work? We need to remove 1.3 mil. Damn, they are right up on the tax. 1.3, so just take like a bad contract. Not bad, but like cheap contract. Landry Shamet, that's the one. Shamet. Okay, it's not as hard to do as I thought. You can forgive the lack of floor spacing Jamal Shed has if you've got a center against you. But like, why on earth would the Knicks do this? This doesn't make the Knicks. The Knicks are trying to win a championship this season. This trade does not help them accomplish that. So, and they traded quickly once, and they probably don't want that contract back. I don't know why would the Knicks do this, dude. Unless they're giving them picks, but I think they're just gonna keep. I think they're just gonna keep Karl-Anthony Towns. Here's a trade that was brought up by K Cedar in the Discord. If you want to join the Discord, go to the link in the description. Okay, so this is in the mock trades channel. So the Knicks get Jaren Jackson, Ochai Agbaji, John Conchar, Jock Landale, and they have to give up Karl-Anthony Towns for all that. So immediately, I don't think the Knicks are giving up enough to get Jaren Jackson because Jaren Jackson's on a friendlier contract, a terrific defender, terrific offensive player. You could make a case you'd rather have Jaren Jackson, to be honest. The Raptors get Ja Morant and Karl-Anthony Towns, and they are giving up Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Jacob Gramegna, Ochai Agbaji to do this. So this is not including picks. So like picks would have to be involved. Obviously, the Raptors fan, I'd be pretty stoked with a trade like that, I think. But for the Grizzlies, they're giving away Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja Morant, and they are only getting 3 bad contracts back. Like, the Grizzlies would have to be getting a ton of picks to do this. I don't see at all why the Grizzlies would have an interest in this, to be honest. They want to trade Ja Morant. I do not think they're going to be that hell-bent on trading Jaren Jackson Jr. So you'd have to really ramp up the picks for them to do this. Yeah, I don't think so. Fun idea, but the Grizzlies are getting shafted in that trade. Let's be for real. Cat won't come here. Why not? Did he say, if I get traded to Toronto, I will not report? Is he going to pull an Alonzo Mourning? Every GM except Bobby is Nico. every GM makes bad trades? Is that what you're saying? Because if so, I don't agree, really. I don't really agree with that. All right, anyways. This has been your Raptors Happy Hour. Thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out with me tonight. The fun does not stop. In 3 hours and 45 minutes, I guess 42 minutes now, I will be live for Raptors Watch Along as the Raptors go to Portland to take on the Trail Blazers. I'm looking forward to it. I think the Raptors can find another win. I've got a couple of beers in the fridge ready to go. Enjoy my Friday night. Hang out with you guys. Should be great. The Raptors are slight favorites. Let's go and find a way to win this basketball game. 3 wins in a row on the West Coast road trip. Tune in later. Drop a like on your way out. Subscribe for more Raptors content like this. Notifications on so you know when I'm going live. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and for most Raptors games. Should be good tonight.